that I can answer. I can answer questions for a few minutes, and then I'll begin defacing your books with my illegible scroll. Yes?
Just a quick question. Ice was broken up into different swords, and we're
Two swords.
Two swords. And who has the second sword?
Who has the second sword? You mean Widow's Wail?
Yeah.
Well, Joffrey had it, so now presumably it belongs to Tommen. It's the King's sword.
So the sword Brienne has doesn't come from...
That's Oathkeeper,
Yeah.
yes. Two swords.
Okay.
They're both half of ice.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oathkeeper and Widow's Wail.
Thank you.
Yes, back there. Yeah, you.
Hi. I'm a student of writing and publishing, and at my college, we're not allowed to write any speculative fiction. So I just wanted to say that reading your work is like the greatest writing seminar I can get, and I just have a quick question about how...
You need a different college, by the way.
I'm in my senior year.
I'm really pissed off to hear that they won't allow you to write science fiction or fantasy.
Yeah, I'm hoping to change that on my school, but I just wanted to ask, like, how you visualize building the world, how you sort of go about planning the world as you see it. Does the geography come in first, or is it the characters that make up?
The characters come first for me, but you know, I always like to quote Rudyard Kipling, who suddenly has gone all black. I mentioned the name Rudyard Kipling and ended up.
You had to take the black.
There we go. Who wrote there are what was the number? There are 9 and 20 ways of constructing tribal lays, and every single one of them is right. Every writer works differently. You know, Tolkien constructed his world laboriously, inventing 2 entire languages before he began to write a word of the story. I begin with the story and the characters and the scene, and you know, at some point later on, I say, "Ooh, I've dropped the names of 6 kings here. I better sort of make a list and figure out when they reigned and fill in the blanks." And at some point, I think I was 100 pages into the story before I stopped to draw a map. And that sort of thing. Other people like begin with the map and all that. So it's really what you're comfortable with. World building is important, particularly in fantasy and science fiction, but it's not the be-all and end-all. Ultimately, it's still characters and story that should be done. And fantasy is literature. And if you're being told that it's not, then your college, they're ignorant jerks. You know, Lord of the Rings was voted by the readers of the Times of London the most important novel of the 20th century. And those of us who love fantasy take great things in that. They'll be reading Tolkien long after many other contemporary literary writers have forgotten and gathering dust in the bins.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, no, I just did her. I shouldn't do the one next to her. You with the hat there, hat guy.
I was wondering, do you have any like source of inspiration you draw from for your pantheons and just the history that you created?
For the religions?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I just in the vaguest sense. I mean, with fantasy, you begin with something that's grounded in reality, but then you give it an imaginative twist, or you play with a little and you move it around. I mean, I have 3 principal religions. The old gods of the north are basically paganism, you know, with paganism, animism, whatever you want to call it. The idea that there are spirits or gods living in all the trees of the hills and the rocks and something, which goes back to Celtic myth and the myth of many other tribes. The faith of the 7 is, you know, basically a twist on Catholicism and the medieval church with this doctrine of the Trinity. So I made it 7 instead of 3, and played with that. Although the precise identities of the 7, the female side of it, Maiden Mother Crone is of course once again pagan and has been used. I played a little with the male side of that, and I added the stranger, who was the imaginative element. The red faith is grows from Zoroastrianism and also from the Albigensian heresy, where they did believe that there were 2 gods, one good and one evil, and that the world that we live in was created by the evil god. which is actually a strangely persuasive religion, I think, if you study things and then look around at this world. And, you know, boy, there's a lot of screwed up things in the world. Would a good and loving and kind God really have created this world and put in, you know, anthrax and leprosy and all of the other things that we see? So the Cathars kind of had a point, but they're not around anymore. The Catholics killed them all. So it's sort of the ultimate refutation of their belief. So anyway, yes, there are roots, but none of them are one by one. I mean, I just don't take a religion and rub off the serial numbers and give it a fake name. I play with its tenets and try to get a little imaginative and fantastic about it. Okay, now we'll go back to you. Yes?
Do you still play Dungeons and Dragons?
I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. I played one game. It seemed stupid. It was just met a bunch of thieves and barbarians at an inn, and we went to a dungeon and looked for a treasure. It's stupid, but I do play role-playing games, much better role-playing games than Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, where's Ty? Ty, where's my assistant? He's what? Okay. My assistant, Ty Frank, who's here, was the game master of the last game that I was playing in. This great space game where we were all playing guys in this solar system, this world that Ty had created very laboriously, a near future space opera kind of thing where they were you know, Mars and Earth are at war, and there are asteroid belters and, you know, helium freighters and people hauling in ice from the rings of Saturn, and then there's an alien germ discovered, and all hell breaks loose. And we were in the middle of that. I was playing my favorite character from the Rocky Jones Space Ranger show that I grew up with as a kid, Pinto Fortando, space pirate. Pinto Fortando is a very brave man, but and Ty's world was so great that Daniel Abraham was in, you know, said let's make a book out of it, and the two of them got together and wrote Leviathan Wakes, which is a new science fiction novel. It's a terrific kick-ass space opera, and it's really rocketing up some of the charts. I think they have some copies here.
Got a big old stack at the register for anyone who's
Big
interested.
stack of Leviathan Wakes, and it's really a great book, even though, to my great annoyance, Ty and Daniel left out Pinto Fortando. He's not in the book, and I'm very heartbroken about that. But yes, we do play a lot of role-playing games still with the group. It's a great group of writers, you know, mostly writers now, but Walter John Williams, Melinda Snodgrass, Vic Milan, John Miller, a lot of my Wildcard writers, which is another book you might want to pick up in my Wildcard series. If you like the Ice and Fire books, I do other stuff, you know, occasionally. I know there's a long, long wait between books, but, you know, you can fill that gap by reading some of my other stuff, including Wildcards. Here's Ty, the scowling fellow here with the long hair, was the game master of our latest game, and kept doing terrible, humiliating things to Pinto. Yes, in the back there.
Who's the Knight of the Laughing Tree?
Who's what?
The Knight of the Laughing Tree.
Who is the Knight of the Laughing Tree? That is a puzzle. Yes, you hat guy.
How do you explain the varying length of seasons?
How do I explain the varying length of the seasons? Another good question. Yes.
Are you excited to write the Battle of the Blackwater script, or are you a little nervous because of the budget?
I've already written the Battle of the Blackwater script. It's finished. It was a real challenge. It was actually much harder than my script for first season, because our problem with that is budgetary. I mean, Dave and Daniel and HBO would love nothing more than to do the Battle of the Blackwater exactly as I wrote it in the books. But it would cost as much as the Hobbit movie, you know? It's you know, I managed to write that battle, you know, limited only by my imagination and not having to worry about budget and all that, with everything possible to make it expensive and unproducible. There are giant fleets of ships, there's huge fires, there's 3 monstrous trebuchets that are taller than the city walls. There's, you know, vast armies of people on horses. There's a great chain that goes across the river. There are exploding ships and ships crashing together, and much of it takes place at night. It's really, really tough. So, so writing it was tough. You know, I mean, we have some great scenes in there. I hope that that I wrote that are pretty much straight from the books. The scenes in the Queen's chambers where Cersei is entertaining the women of the city and the castle, and Sansa is with her. The scene between Sansa and the Hound is there, and you know, many other things that I think work very well. But the battle stuff is what you know, I wrote a version. I had to cut some things. We knew right from the beginning there was some things we weren't going to be able to do. And even that was stuff I was writing as well. How much is actually going to make it in, and how much more are we going to have to cut? And I don't know the answer to that. You know, we're budgeting a significant chunk of the second season budget to do that battle, and to do it as well as we can. But it presents immense budgetary and shooting things. You know, we can't take 6 months to do this. We have to do the whole show in 6 months. So we don't have the resources of Peter Jackson here, even though we're as well-heeled as any show on television. There's a limit to what we could do, and that made it very tough for me to write. You know, I'm trying to write something that's good and exciting and will be visually powerful, and then I'm worrying, oh God, I'm never going to be able to do this. This is too expensive. It's a flashback to my old days, the 10 years I spent in Hollywood, where everything I wrote was too long and too expensive. So 3 more questions here, and then I'll start defacing your books. Yes, over there. You, yes.
I was wondering about Bronn and Jacqueline, and if we're ever going to see them again.
Bronn and who?
And Jacqueline?
Yes, you are going to see them again.
George, right over here.
Yes?
What determines the length of the seasons in Westeros, and are they the same around the world?
Well, kind of. I mean, Westeros is extreme because it's the only continent with its particular geography. These will be explained eventually, but the explanation will be a magical one. So all of the people who are sending me long science fictional guesses about binary star systems and axial tilt and the period of rotation are barking up the very wrong tree. Yes?
Have you already decided the ending of the 2 books, or is that an ongoing thing that's still evolving?
Have I decided the ending of the final book?
The final book's right.
Yes, I know the ending. I know the ending. I have to reach it. I said on my last book tour, somebody asked me that question. I said, yes, the last book will consist of everybody will be dead, and there will be a 1,000-page description of snow blowing across their grave.
And we'll read it.
And believe it or not, I should know better than to say these things, because some people took that seriously and wrote me angry letters about that. How could you kill everybody? You can't do that, you know. I don't know. Obviously, some of these jokes don't come across when tweeted or something like that. So, all right, let's take one more. And yes, okay. Yeah, you.
When you design a character, do you base your character on a strict outline, or when you create the character as you're writing, does that character sort of evolve into something maybe you originally didn't intend?
Well, I don't do formal outlines. I have a good idea of a character when I create them, especially the major characters who've been along all along, or the new major characters who come in. You know, someone like Victorian or Quentin in the new book. I have an idea of who they are. Now, minor characters, sometimes I'm just, you know, writing away and I say, oh, this guy needs a butler. What should his name be? Okay, his name should be Bill. And then I find myself, you know, first Bill says, would you like some tea? And then Bill starts to assume more personality. And then Bill has a lot of personality. And then Bill is pushing himself into the scene. You know, for example, Dolorous Ed. I mean, I never intended to do Dolorous Ed as a major character, even a secondary character. I just needed a steward. I figured the Lord Commander would have a steward, and who would it be? And Dolorous Ed appeared, and he was kind of funny, and he started getting all the good lines, and he's assumed more importance. So sometimes these secondary characters do appear and grow. So I could answer your questions for another 5-6 hours, but meanwhile there are hundreds of people down below and out in the sun who can't hear a word I'm saying. So I better start signing and getting you people out of here so they can come up. So we'll start doing that now.